Good morning, everyone. I have to say, this is fantastic. For the last 2.5 years, I've seen many of you on that size, right, on screens. And now I'm seeing you in full beauty, strength, and energized for the day. Thank you all for coming. That's really fantastic. My name is Thomas Vogrup. I'm the strategic lead of the GPA coordination unit. I think everybody knows what the GPA stands for because we signed up for this conference, so I don't have to explain our long title. And on behalf of the three organizers, I'm happy to welcome you today here in the beautiful city of Kigali. The three organizers are the GPA coordination unit, or rather the GPA steering group, consisting of 16 member organizations, the NOCAP team, and Practical Action. Also want to use this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to our sponsors for today. Without them, it wouldn't be possible. And this is mainly the German Federal Foreign Office and also the Norwegian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Norwegian Development Corporation, NORA. So thank you all. Without that, it wouldn't be possible here. I'm one of the two co-facilitators of today, so we will guide you through the rest of the day. And this gives me a moment to introduce Anila.
Thank you everyone. Myself is Anila, and I would like to say something about my work. Should I say it right now? Okay. Refugee. As soon as we hear about this word, we see the images, people on the boat crying for help, vulnerable women and crying children. On the other hand, as soon as we talk about themes like SDGs, green energy, or zero emission, we think about out of the space, smart people working on the high-tech technologies. This is a different scenario, right? Today we are making sure when we are talking about refugees and high technologies and green energy, we understand why it is important to involve refugees. Because myself, as I said, we are part of Global Refugee-led Network, which is more than 300 refugee-led initiatives who are making sure we identify the gaps and we prevent the gaps which is unable to understand the need of refugees. Because today, we really want to talk about the future, and we really want to make a just and equal future for all of us. Our motto, nothing about us without us, accelerating tool. This approach helps us to give more understanding of global compact of refugees, and we are bringing that approach to here. Today, when we are talking about adequate and reliable access to the basic energy and its services, it is very critical for the people in fragile contexts as displacement and conflict. Energy actually really underpins the most critical humanitarian needs for safety, shelter, food, and for the clean water for all of us. We advocate, and now we are ready to share our ambitions, our passion, our lived experience, and commitment to work towards build multi-stakeholders approach, bring everyone on the same page, and to bring towards all the strong future we want for all of us. We are happy and extend our collaboration to work towards a just and inclusive energy transition, and that is based on gender sensitivity, locally led and globally connected. Thank you.
Thanks, Anila. And before we dive into the day, as an opening, we have the pleasure to have an opening welcoming address and a fantastic panel session. And the opening address will be delivered by a woman which I think in the energy sector we don't need to introduce, but I will still do it. Damilola is the CEO of SE4All. The big forum starts tomorrow. I'm sure many of you will attend this as well. She is also the co-chair of UN Energy. She is a special representative of the UN Secretary General. She is the face of SDG 7. And last but not least, she's also, I think, a very powerful voice for an energy transition in Africa. It gives me great pleasure to introduce and welcome to stage, or rather to the lectern, Damilola Okumbi.
Thank you. It's my real honor to be here. And this is my first event in Kigali, so I'm really excited, especially as it deals with humanitarian and also deals with energy. This is a subject we tend to leave behind when we're even talking about SDG 7. So in 2021 alone, UNHCR estimated that 84 million people were forcefully displaced from their homes. The number of globally displaced people has increased substantially this year and is predicted to continue rising even further in the coming years, compounded by climate change, COVID-19, and these wars that we see around the world. UNHCR also estimates that over 5.5 million people have fled from Ukraine to the neighboring countries since February, and the number keeps rising. Energy access is critically important in displacement contexts of humanitarian settings. Refugees and displaced people need electricity for their homes, their businesses, and to power their community facilities. Electricity also critical to power humanitarian operations. Worldwide, unfortunately, we still have 759 million people who have no access to electricity at all. So they can't zoom in and watch us all today. And about 2.6 billion people that have no access to clean cooking solutions. While some countries are closing in on the energy gap, we are not on track to meet SDG 7. And the truth is, if we do not meet SDG 7 by 2030, we cannot achieve our climate goals by 2060. Progress is often made and localized, and there's also the problem of population outpacing the rate of energy access. Communities in the last mile, hard-to-reach areas and vulnerable populations will require additional support. The humanitarian energy community gathered here today is doing exactly that by shining the light on the barriers and the opportunities to ensure that refugees and displaced households can be part of the global clean energy revolution. The vast majority of the world's displaced people do not have access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy sources. While we all know that data is critical for good decision-making and planning, we are seeing big data gaps in the availability and the reliability of the data. And this is just being practical. Who needs energy when, and what is the best form of energy to give them? With limited data, especially in refugee camps, points towards a massive energy gap. As you all know, and it will probably be mentioned multiple times today, more than 90% of displaced people in camps do not have access to electricity. And over 80% still rely on fuel wood and charcoal for cooking. But I'm convinced that we can close this gap, invest in data, invest in technology, invest in people, and also invest in the renewable solutions that we have at hand. Of course, this will not be easy. We need better policies that truly focus on a just and equitable transition that truly leaves no one behind. We need better data so that the interventions can reach the maximum amount of people. And we also need the humanitarian energy sector to be de-risked so private sector can actually come in and aid in this effort. What is clear is that without substantial investment, and this is financial investment, and decisive political action on Sustainable Development Goal 7, which is clean, reliable, and affordable energy, it's unlikely that we will achieve the context in terms of the humanitarian crisis as well, because to get people out of poverty, you have to get them out of energy poverty. But I would like to leave you with this message of hope that we can achieve SDG 7. There are enough people in this room with very clever minds to show us how to do it. It's a topic that we would also be discussing in the SE4 Global Forum happening in Kigali, the first one in Africa, so I'm very excited. So I hope you can take away not just inspiring stories, but actually focus on an action plan. We have so many policies, so many conferences, but what is actually going to happen on ground? Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. I'm just checking which mic should I use. Thank you so much, Ms. Camilla. It was so inspirational. I would like to now go to our high-level panel, and I will request my guests, Mrs. Fernanda Ingabe and Mark Carreto and Mr. Andrew, to join me on the floor, please. Please come. Would you like to give them a big hand, please? Please just sit, yes, anywhere. Yes. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we had one panel online, but due to technical issues, Jennifer from our German Secretary General, Federal Folder from Office of Germany, they are unable to join. Oh, she said, oh, sorry, she's here, so sorry. Apologize. Yeah, so sorry. You know, we are trying to, because I couldn't able to see her here, so I thought she is not here, but she's here. Okay, thank you so much for joining. So I will come back to you then. Thank you so much for joining, and really apologize again. Ms. Jennifer Morgan, I would like to start my panel discussion with you, and we would like to request you, representing one of the largest donor for humanitarian actions, who is also providing the funding for this conference today. Thank you for that. We really want to know why it is energy widen is in displacement setting is an important topic for your government. Would you like to share your comments, please?
Thanks so much. It's great to be virtually with you. I wish I was with you in person. And this incredibly important topic right now. And I think, why we think that the energy transition, or the Energiewende, as we call it in Germany, in displacement studies is important. I think there's many reasons. I saw recently, and this is just one story, but a story in the Guardian about Rwanda, and it really in the Rwandan camps and the life there, and I found that it really demonstrated why the energy transition is so important also in displacement settings. I think the solar-powered street lamps, the home solar systems, the cleaner cooking stoves, they made a tremendous difference. And first, they reduce vulnerability. You know well that women and children who had to collect firewood outside the camps, well, if there's solar, they no longer face the danger, or if there's light, of sexual aggression and beatings. And what more, the solar lit streets and street lamps, well, people couldn't easily be robbed. And children could finally study or play outside while they waited for dinner. So I think just this reduction of vulnerability and a basic quality of life is so key. Second, I think renewable energy brought back people from a position of disempowerment and dependency. So I think, moving from disempowerment and dependency to one where they can actually contribute to the community. So refugees could acquire new skills and start businesses, and some, started to make a living out of selling and installing and servicing solar equipment. And that's something, a craft that they can bring back to their community of origin. And then finally, I think it really can change the perception of refugees in the host communities, because they have something to offer, and that is sustainable, modern, affordable energy. And I think that's very important, which is going beyond mere perception. Rolling out green energy to refugee camps, I think, could be incredibly a way of really rolling out green energy to the host countries at large, which is a goal that Germany very much supports. So it's not the silver bullet, and obviously it's a piece of the puzzle, but I think it's an important piece, as you were also saying, Anila. It's everyday life, and it's everyday life even for 17 years for some. So let me stop there and just wanted to share a little bit of the importance of the energy transition.
Thank you so much. I will further goes to Mrs. Ingabir. Thank you so much, and really I apologize if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. I would like to first of all thank you very much for hosting us, your hospitality and hosting this conference here. In addition to that, I would say Rwanda has also have a very generous refugee policy since many years. Can you tell us a bit more about the situation in the displacement setting in the country, especially when it comes to energy?
Thank you so much, Anila, for the opportunity. I'm really excited to share the government of Rwanda policies and implementation as well. So the government of Rwanda is hosting around 130,000 refugees, and 90% of those refugees are living in refugee camps in different districts of the country, whereas 10% of those refugees are living in urban areas. Most of those refugees are in need of energy, for cooking, for lighting, and for offices as well. So, as I said, those refugee camps are in hillside, where they are living in those settlements in the hilly, and they have been experiencing a kind of environmental degradation because of the nature of the slope of the soil there. And also they have been experiencing a kind of shortage in terms of energy coming from biomass, you know. That was the really challenges the refugee camps and the government of Rwanda are facing as challenges, as I can say. So with that, the government of Rwanda put in place a kind of policies to deal with those challenges, specifically for energy, for environment degradation, and so on. That is why during the Global Refugee Forum of 2019, the government of Rwanda made a kind of commitment, specifically the two commitments on energy and environment degradation. The first commitment was to rehabilitate environmental degradation, to rehabilitate those environment in and around the refugee camps, I mean for refugees and host communities as well. And the second one was to promote the use of clean and renewable energy in refugee camps and host communities as well. As a way of the implementation, maybe I can share with you a little bit on the implementation progress made so far. On the environment degradation, we have commissioned a kind of a study, a feasibility study, to see what kind of environment degradation are there and what kind of implementation or the technologies to be used to rehabilitate the environment, because there were kind of a big ravines and gullies in and around the refugee camp, and that are causing a kind of damages downstream, here I mean for the host communities, for their properties, even for their lives, you know. So the study is being done. Right now we have a study and we have the implementation plan. We have key action plan to be implemented, and thanks a lot to World Bank and the UNHCR for supporting on this one. Right now we are in the tendering process to see how those interventions can be done, and we have a kind of timeline of 2 years to have all of those environmental gradations rehabilitated, if you can say. So for energy, the government of Rwanda has a kind of a policy to use or to promote the use of clean and renewable energy in public institutions, the big ones, and the refugee camps as well. As you know, the public institutions and refugee camps have been competing around scarce resources that are biomass for energy. So with that policy in refugee camps from 2018, we promoted the use of clean energy. As of now, 60% of refugees are using LPG, and they are also using the pellets, and they are using a kind of briquette. So with that, we still have a kind of gaps and challenges as well, because we have a kind of limited resources to have all of those clean energy in place. But thanks to UNHCR and the partners who have been working tirelessly to have those technologies, but we still have gaps, if I can say. For the lighting, for the offices, we are also using a kind of clean energy because we are using hydropower plant in and around the refugee camps for lighting and for the offices as well as source of energy. And we have also partners who are working on the solar energy as source of energy for lighting and offices as well. So as I said, we have a kind of challenges with limited resources and even affordability, you know. Refugees that are living in refugee camps have a kind of limited resources because they don't have a kind of formal jobs. So the affordability is an issue for to have those clean energy in a place. So we still have a long to go, yes, but we have been doing a lot, and we are welcoming any support that can contribute to the fulfillment of the government goal. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing the key points. And as you were talking about the barriers, and I will come to Mark. Mark, you are heading Power Africa, the largest energy program of USAID. From your perspective, what are the biggest obstacles for achieving SDGs 7 in the displacement setting, and how is Power Africa supporting this topic?
Great. Well, thanks. First of all, thanks for the invitation. Super excited to be here and share the stage. Damilola, great remarks, a good friend of Power Africa, one of our oldest partners, and then of course UNHCR sits on the steering committee of SEC, and both Thomas from UNITAR and later I guess we're followed by Owen from Chatham House are on the advisory committee and are really valued members. So all to say is that we're excited to be part of this coalition and part of this partnership. Critical work, obviously. Hopefully you know Power Africa is a public-private partnership, and we really take the public-private part seriously in terms of trying to figure out how to go after twin challenges, like everyone else I'm assuming in this room, of dramatically expanding energy access and combating the climate crisis. We aim to expand energy access by 60 million people by 2030, so we have a pretty big ambition. This, of course, was a presidential initiative started by President Obama, nearly 10 years old next year. And working hard to figure out how to build out both the systems in addition to making sure we're getting the work done immediately and not just talking about it. You know, we need to make sure, and we are making sure that this extends to the most vulnerable populations, and that's critical. And of course, we all know that Sub-Saharan Africa, like the rest of the world, displaced are among the most vulnerable. So how do we try to learn what we're learning elsewhere and then go with the extra challenge of trying to figure out how to help displaced populations? You know, the answer, of course, is it requires unprecedented complexity and cooperation and collaboration. And often the problem I think we see in development space is that a lot of us are doing great work, and at times we're all aligned to the same goal. That's great. If we're more than the sum of our parts, that's all the better, right? And because money's resources are always scarce, you know, it's complex stuff. Right? I mean, we back and we're in a kind of a redesign phase in Power Africa in terms of the next suite of larger contracts and programs we're going to have to go after the issue. And we start peeling back the onion and we realize, wow, this is dependent on this, and this variable is absolutely unfixable, and how do we look at this, and how do we stay opportunistic? How do we make sure, though, we're also strategic and building on past investment? You know, COVID hit. Health facility electrification was something we always did, and now we got to do a lot more of it. So how do we put that in? And then, of course, refugees and the rest of that is right in there. And so in 2018, we co-founded and invested heavily in the Smart Communities Coalition, which hopefully you know about. It's a public-private partnership founded by us and MasterCard, and it's really trying to look at private sector-led service delivery in displacement settings. And that's a paradigm shift, right? We're trying to, you know, part of our core belief is that there is resources and wherewithal and business models out there that can make this easily and more sustainable than just subsidy driven all the time. Now, subsidies are going to be needed, especially in areas like this. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's all up to the private sector and let's just close our eyes and say they'll get it done. They won't get it done on their own. But if we work together, we can find ways to get it done, right? And we can find other pools of resources. We can find other innovations that we might not know about that will make this work. And so that's kind of what it's trying to get after. We co-founded that because we do know the challenges of climate and displacement and energy access will require it. So at the end of the day, it's almost like you can go backwards and say, this is so complex, without doing it with other people's innovations and business models, we just won't get the job done. So it's a bridge in some respects to connecting humanitarian organizations and the private sector companies. I mentioned that it's improving service delivery is kind of the core of it, but it has 75 members and collaborators, including many of you here today. And as I said before, it is a paradigm shift. It goes away from short-term relief. And I was talking with Andrew earlier, and we all know that short-term relief in cycles is hard, because after a while there is fatigue in short-term relief and fundraising and going after it. And we have to be able to hit the immediate needs. You can't wait and say, well, we'll plan the perfect plan and get there in 5 years. Get that. But the same token, we got to build those building blocks to get 5 years from now, we're in a markedly different spot than we were today, right? We have to start building those institutions and that paradigm shift immediately. So we put about $4 million of funding into the coalition. We launched also another really exciting part with GIZ, Smart Community Coalition Innovation Fund. And happy to announce that a second call for proposals happened just last week. So if you're interested, please look that up. We got people in the room as well to help connect and make that happen. Through this window, we're seeking proposals for combining modern energy services, connectivity, and digital tools. And that could be a new activity, or it could be existing clean energy activities that are adding a connectivity or digital tools component. So we're increasingly seeing, and this was actually funnily, on some level, came through the back door, and we started looking at health facility electrification and said, well, powering clinics makes sense, but we really need to make sure that connectivity is also a really big part of this. And it's another building block, much like energy poverty, that if you don't have connectivity, as we all see in this day and age, many of us probably had situations where families or others or our jobs, of course, needed connectivity to even continue to do what we were doing during COVID. That's going to increase, and obviously displaced populations are in the exact same situation, so how do we bring that in as well? Anyway, this aligns with all our work. I mentioned health facility electrification. We're super excited to support these private sector-led solutions in this area and others, so I'll stop there.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just checking thank you so much. Yes, thank you. I'm just looking for my tech team. Is Miss Jennifer still online, so we can have her?
I'm here.
Okay, thank you. So before going to the, Andrew, I would like to ask you a question because you are online and you have to go. So we really appreciate, and we really want to request you, looking forward, we understand the challenge and we know we have technical solution out there. How is Germany supporting efforts to achieve SDG 7 for displaced people? And what would you expect from your humanitarian partners?
Thanks, and thanks for having me come back in quickly. I think, we were one of the co-founders of the Global Platform for Action on Sustainable Energy and Displacement Settings in 2018, and been a supporter since then because of the importance of the work. And I think looking forward, we're focusing on two aspects. First is really replacing diesel generators with solar systems in refugee camps. And here, the German Federal Foreign Office has funded a pilot project in the refugee camp in Djibouti, and it's designed to showcase it, if and how such a replacement can work. And ideally, the humanitarian sector should start rolling out such replacement on a much larger scale. And we're looking forward to cooperating with other partners on this issue. And second, I think we should really look at energy and displacement settings more strongly as a problem solver for women and girls. One example is energy for cooking, where we know that firewood collection deprives women of time, and indoor exhaust causes respiratory illnesses and diseases in women and children. And another example, of course, is energy for health, the life of women in medical operations conducted in camps. So those were the two ways, both the replacing diesel generators and then really focusing on women and girls and the focus there. And just final statement is, the climate crisis is exacerbating so many of the problems for people living in displaced settings, and where they're also creating climate migrants. I saw that when I was recently in Mali and Niger, and we're very committed to working with partners. And thanks so much for organizing this.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you. I would like to go to Andrew, because we are talking about refugees, displacement, and the connectivity. So, Andrew, you have been in the capacity as a special advisor to the UNHCR for the climate action. You travel a lot in displacement setting, and especially heavily affected by the global warming. Would you like to share with us some example how important energy is there in these settings?
Okay, no, thank you. Thank you, and I'd just like to pay my respects to the people of Rwanda, because I think what is also clear is that if Rwanda can get to this stage after such traumatic history, then what do other countries have as far as excuses are concerned? And I think this is really important. We need to stop looking at trying to justify why we need to be doing it. We just need to be doing it. And people who sort of say, look, like, why is energy part of our mandate, whether it's UNHCR or any of the other UN agencies? Energy is protection. Energy is about dignity. Energy is about moving people from dependency to empowerment. And it's not good enough when we start saying, okay, we're going to be looking at changing our diesel generators, full stop. That's not it. It's about livelihoods. It's about education. It's about health. It's about a future. And this is where we need to be starting to look much more ambitiously. And you asked for an example. We've got Juliet here from South Sudan today. And the UN community, as well as almost everyone else in South Sudan, moves diesel in to run their generators by boat or by helicopter. And it's still not being rolled out there. So what we have to start asking ourselves, why is this the case? Why are we still accepting the status quo? And I think it's excellent that we're in Rwanda, because we're seeing what can be done if there is sufficient drive and sufficient ambition. And so we had a discussion last night with a lot of the NORCAP deployees, and again, thanks to them and to everyone else who's working on the front lines of climate, because they're the ones that we should be listening to and asking them, what are the challenges that you're being faced with on a daily basis? And sort of then questioning, why are their bosses blocking it? Why aren't they getting funding? Because from what I'm hearing, there's a lot of money about. From what I hear, there's huge needs. What I don't hear, there's very much being done about it, at the scale. And there's enough pilots being done, enough of that. We need to be going at scale. And if there is blockages, and if it involves refugees, if something's not working, my job is to know about it. So don't hold it back. We need to make this work, and we've got the partners and collaborators here to help us do that. So don't feel alone, and I think this is why it's so important to have this community of practice, that we can share best practices and we can try and find ways in which we can break these blockages and find innovative ways of financing. As Mark was also saying, we should not be just looking at a dependency where we're just providing things for free. That's not sustainable. So we need to be going big, we need to be looking at impact, and we need to make sure it's sustainable, and we need to be ensuring it's collaborative, and we need to be making sure it's owned by the community that we're helping. It's not owned by people in Geneva or Washington or Brussels or elsewhere. It needs to be owned by the communities where the people have been displaced to. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Andrew, I would like to continue with you. And as you are talking about humanitarian action, I would like to know, UNHCR and the humanitarian agencies are still running thousands of diesel programs, generators every day. And even now, at the onset of a humanitarian operation, often as emergency, the diesel generator is a still default. And why is that causing that, and how we can change this?
Good news is it's not a default.
Okay.
And so even with the Ukraine crisis, when there's a request for diesel generators, we're questioning that. So this is what we have to be asking. Like, it's almost like how Rwanda said no more plastic bottles. Or sorry, you have plastic bags. If you can do that in a place like here, and anyone who's been travelling around the world in displacement settings, you sort of say it's impossible to stop that. Rwanda can show that you can do that. And it's just, it involves everyone. So it's not just UNHCR, it's also our partners. It's whether it's the US government, whether it's the the EU, it's the donors, it's the NGOs, sort of saying, look, like, is there another way of doing it? And one of the challenges that we have within UNHCR is we're a humanitarian agency, obviously a protection agency, and we're used to reacting. We're used to working in short time frames, 1 year budget cycles. It's also one of the problems that donors have, this challenging of trying to link a humanitarian response with a much more environmentally sustainable response. And I dare say no donor has really cracked that nexus yet of linking the development with the humanitarian, with more of a climate environmental approach. So that's, yeah, that'll do me.
Thank you so much. I will like to come back to our, host from Rwanda. Mr. Fernando, what is Rwanda's goals to provide energy access, and does these goals include displaced situation? And what do you expect from us? You see so many people are here as a partner. What do you expect them? How we can support Rwanda's energy? Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. Actually, for the government of Rwanda, we know the policies are there. Policies are there. What is required is to capacitate our people to implement the policy, I like the way our colleague from UNHCR is saying that the energy is a power. Yeah. Energy is a dignity, If we try to, if we reach the point where our people have the required awareness and knowledge, if we have our people having kind of capacity in terms of affording those energy, I think the goal will be achieved, So let us capacitate our people. Let us start by awareness raising, capacity building, education, so that our people can understand very well the policies and can afford the energy. So what the government of Rwanda is looking to have right now is to have that kind of capacities, starting from mindset changing for the household in refugee camps, in host communities, and then having that kind of energy to have a kind of access, the services. If the services are there, if the host communities and the refugees have the capacity, I think our job will be somehow easier. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mark, I will come to you. We often see a challenge between the short-term response-oriented humanitarian sector on energy programs especially, so which is always a multi-year of effort. What can the humanitarian sector learn from the energy development sector, and how we can actually really include humanitarian energy more effectively and in development energy program to reach the necessary scale?
No, thanks. Before I answer that one, though, I want to piggyback quickly on what Jennifer and Andrew said, because I think there's something that's obvious, but we don't think about it enough in this question of diesel generators and renewable solutions. 2 points. Often when we're looking at a development challenge, what we're trying to do is find a way to get money into the system, right? And at the end of the day, we get very complex and we get to figure out ideas and we change models, but that fundamental need for the money that circulates around is gone. That's not the challenge here. People pay a lot for diesel. People who can't afford it pay a lot for diesel. So this is like one of those awesome problems. Yeah, but it's going to be hard to figure out, but the money's in the system for the most part. I mean, it's going to take, and with battery technology and backup, especially we're seeing this with health facility electrification, and in a lot of areas where we know we can't afford to have power go out. As batteries become more affordable, as renewable becomes cheaper, the money, we have to just circulate the money better. So yeah, there's going to be a CapEx problem to start with, but the OpEx problem, which is usually the challenge, is not there. So this one I'm excited about. Like, wow, we can get this done. So let's get this done. To your second point, yeah, it's a good question. I like where Andrew's going with this, so I'm going to a little bit make sure I hit this as well. We probably have an unnecessary divide on some level between humanitarian assistance and development. Of course, they're different skill sets, different people, different careers even, different needs, an immediacy, obviously, that's part of the former, well, I would argue part of the latter as well, for sure. But why don't we start taking those bridges down a little bit and learning, and I think that's where your question's getting at, and how to make that not necessarily be the question about how does humanitarian learn from development, how does development learn from, let's get it done. Again, there's a time frame probably issue here, but it doesn't necessarily mean the answers need to be that much different. We talked about the dual crisis of climate and conflict driving. Sadly, it's true. We've seen it under COVID, the number of people who are unelectrified in sub-Saharan Africa, Damilola mentioned, is going up, not down, despite, I think, a lot of great work being done, a lot of technological advances. So it's as urgent as ever. I probably don't need to cite statistics back to this crowd who knows them better than I do, but 10 million Ukrainians displaced to date, 2 million northern Ethiopians, countless others around the world. It's a big issue, right? And then the one that, so I spent 7 years in East Africa as well, in the Horn of Africa. And the other issue that I think has always been there, but again, sadly becoming way more acute, is consecutive seasons of lack of rain, right, due to climate crisis and the driving of what's happening there in the Horn of Africa. So 20 million people at risk of hunger, and many then have to be displaced. So you add yet another challenge onto an already really hard problem. Smallholder farming in Africa is challenging. It's challenging anywhere in the world. You put it somewhere where it's not even where you're from, where you don't have communities in the same way, where you don't have maybe a knowledge of the landscape in the same manner, and you further complicated it tremendously, right? So I mentioned those droughts. I probably should have mentioned as well that in Somalia, worst drought in 40 years, the brink of famine, right? So these are absolutely pressing conversations. So while fossil fuels has probably played a major role in the current climate crisis, not probably, I'll be unequivocal here, absolutely has played a tremendous role in the current climate crisis. I think clean energy can help mitigate it, right? And we talked about some of these ideas. The one, obviously, we're going with over and over again is solar as a way to displace diesel. That's a big one, especially in this setting. But there's many, many more out there that can be a way you can mitigate the worst effects. You mentioned smaller farmers. About 60% of the population in sub-Saharan Africa is, and most of them depend on rain. Irrigation's tough. Irrigation's expensive. It's hard on subsidy and subsistence crops. It's hard, again, back to my first point, there's no money in the system. So it's really hard to continue to make it go easier. Now we try to move to higher value crops to get money into the system so it can circulate and people can all benefit. But clean energy is another way to help do that, right? So one way we looked at is in a lot of spots there is sufficient groundwater. So can a solar-backed pump system be part of the solution then? So you have a pro-climate crisis or development, and you also have one that's working with vulnerable populations. So solar-powered pumps, we work with a company called Sun Culture, for instance. Tens of thousands of farmers are moving to try to get to a renewable solution to what is a climate-focused problem. Another example in a refugee camp, I think a good one as well, that we're proud of, is in the Kiran Yandogo refugee settlement in Uganda. We're working with solar-powered chicken hatcheries, for instance. So Andrew made the point as well, absolutely salient one, and we're looking at this for Power Africa in all contexts, is that energy access is critical. Productive use of energy access is really the step to get from where you're at to where you need to be, and that's sustainable challenge.
And Mark, if I add one last question for 1 minute only,
Sure.
because we hardly have any time. Thank you, Thomas, for showing the mark. Looking forward, what are the next steps from engagement of Power of Africa in displacement setting? Because this is the main point we really want to connect. So in 1 minute, what's your insight?
1 minute. Wow, tough problem for 1 minute. No, I mentioned we're in redesign mode, so please come talk to us about
Yes.
what you think we should be doing. Much like Andrew, we want to hear it. If we're not doing the right stuff, we need to understand and hear more voices. It's always a challenge to get the inclusivity of voices we need to get the right solutions. And like any big bureaucratic government structure or big structure in general, UN, World Bank, all of us, it's hard to always listen, so we need better tools. So come talk. Help us get our job done. I mentioned the second round of the SDC Innovation Fund. Super excited about that. Please look into it. Please go to the website. Exciting ideas are due by June 1st, so a bit of a tight time frame. And then finally, I'm pleased to announce that we just committed another $850,000 in catalytic grant funding to develop solar mini-grids in Rawamwanja in Uganda. So we're trying to also make sure our programs are cycling through as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I have so many questions, but unfortunately we're out of time. Would you please give them a big hand, please? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's an amazing discussion that we had. And I really want to continue discussion by thanking my panelists. They really talk about, energy, the importance, how we can make key action point implementation. So thank you so much. Now I will go to the amazing video which we had. And I would like to, to my tech team again, if they put the video. But before introducing the video, I also like to introduce Mr. Graham from the Chatham House, who will give introduction about this video. I'm just looking, yeah, he's here. Sorry, I'm just, yes. Wherever, the whole floor is yours. So can we have the video on the screen, please? Yes.
From Afghanistan to Ukraine to Sudan, the world is grappling with the consequences of people forced to flee their homes due to conflict. One factor often overlooked is that many displaced people lack access to energy services, services that are essential for dignified lives and livelihoods. Although humanitarian energy has risen up the political agenda of many organizations and action on the ground is happening, progress is not keeping pace with the rising number of displaced people. In 2014, 89% of people in refugee camps were without meaningful access to power. This figure has risen to 94% according to our analysis of the latest available data. Of this group in 2014, 77% were reliant on basic fuels like wood for cooking. This figure now stands at 81%. This is not to say there hasn't been progress. There has. In Jordan, Azraq and Zaatari refugee camps are connected to grid electricity enabled by solar farms. In Rwanda, large-scale interventions have brought additional light and power to 58% of camp households and improved cooking solutions for 33% of households. And in Bangladesh, Rohingya refugees are cooking with gas, saving them time and money while conserving the local environment. There is more money, interest, and efforts being devoted to these issues than at any time in the past. But we're not moving fast enough to keep pace with the growing levels of long-term displacement. In the period between our analyses, the number of people in refugee camps has risen from 8.7 million in 2014 to 13.1 million in 2020, an increase of 34%. We must redouble our efforts and our financing to avoid leaving these groups behind when it comes to delivering the heat, light, and power they need. Visit the website of the Global Platform for Action to find out more.
Thank you very much. There you go. That's our new video. Yeah, and I guess just hello to everybody. It's so lovely to be here. It's great to look out across this room, see so many familiar faces, and also just as a personal reflection to look on that first panel. It's super to have climate and energy celebrities coming to our world, and it's a really lovely moment for me. So yeah, thank you for having me again. So if we could go to the slides, I guess as an introduction, I'm Owen Graffam. I'm the Assistant Director of the Environment and Society Programme at Chatham House. I've been leading our work around kind of how the humanitarian system deals with energy and environmental issues since about 2014, which I guess feels like a really long time, and it kind of is. So I've taken the liberty of calling it a decade. It's nearly a decade, and I hope Thomas forgives me the poetic license. I guess I just wanted to start really by saying that I'm both excited to present some of the data that was talked about in that video, but of course also sad. Excited because as a researcher, it's always great when you're actually able to step forward and say new things and talk about new information, and this is genuinely new data, hot off the press this morning, so that's all very good. The sad part, of course, is that when you look at the scale of the challenge, it's huge, and I think that's difficult for all of us working on this subject to grapple with. But before we get into that too deeply, I just wanted to start back at that place in 2014 and to look back at where we were. I guess to overly simplify, we had a humanitarian system that didn't often think about energy. And when it did think about energy, it did so in a very short-term way, and a way that was almost entirely ad hoc in terms of how it was delivered. refugees were almost always kind of passive recipients of the energy products that were given. And those products were often, bulk procured and they weren't familiar with them. So, yeah, and I guess we also had businesses treating this issue as a kind of CSR issue rather than a strategy issue. And all of that, of course, meant bad results for displaced people. So, back when I was writing my first stuff around this, we made a model. That model estimated for the first time the energy use of refugees around the world and how much it was costing them and what the effects were. And obviously those outcomes were bad. And if we could go to the next slide, 8 years later, I had a conversation with Thomas and the GPA group, and we decided to try to update that model. And in the end, we've only looked at the camp section of this work. So obviously that's missing out a very large section of displaced people. But the results that come back obviously are not good news. Things are going in the wrong direction. So in 2014, when we did this analysis, the number of people with only the most basic fuel for cooking was 77%. And by the end of 2020, which is the last available data that has the kind of specifications we need, that's now risen to 81%. And if we could go to the next slide, it's basically the same situation for power. So 89% in 2014, rising up to 94% at the end of 2020. And I guess, to me, this is all happening at the same time that well, I guess certainly to my mind, there appears to be more money in the system. There's more attention on this issue. There's more institutional commitments coming forward. There's more programming than I've ever seen happening in this space. And so, yeah, this leads me to think about, well, why? How is this happening? Like, we're going off track, and I don't understand why. And I guess how dispirited should we be about that? So I've tried to grapple with some of that stuff in the next couple of slides, and maybe we go forward one. My answer of why is twofold. It's partly methodological. So on a certain level, this is about knowing more. We understand more about how energy is delivered in refugee settings. And it actually turns out that in the first place, we actually overestimated energy access among some populations. So, for example, recent cooking assessments in Sudan and Ethiopia have showed us that actually, yeah, we've had to kind of downgrade our assessments of energy access in those settings to a certain extent. But primarily and absolutely overwhelmingly, this is about sheer numbers. This is about the number of displaced people out there and about not being able to keep pace with the rising levels of displacement. So, of course, you saw the 34% difference in the people in our assessments. And, yeah, that, of course, doesn't even count the people who are outside of camps. We're going to try and do more analysis about those out-of-camp populations later in the year. So hopefully stay tuned for more on that stuff. And then next slide. The second part of this, how dispirited should we be? Well, yeah, this is the tricky one. This is the one I grapple with. I think the thing to point out is that there are things improving, even as the access picture maybe gets worse. And I've taken this slide from the GPA report that you all have in front of you, so really I should be crediting them, but I just wanted to run through a kind of selection of things which I think are worth thinking about. So, for example, in the area of reliability, we have improvements in the way that refugees are accessing energy. There's lots of solar home system interventions out there which are improving reliability of access for refugees. We also have, solar farms in Malakal and otherwise providing more institutional power, which is providing reliability there. On affordability, I'm really encouraged to see a couple of projects actually really genuinely examining the financial models that would enable those at the very bottom of the pyramid to access energy in a more sustainable way. And I think that's worth highlighting. On sustainability, we have progress with new global level policies and strategies committing to provide ways of thinking through fossil fuel alternatives. On accountability, we have more institutions. IOM, UNHCR, for example, have commitments to provide energy access for forcibly displaced people. And of course, refugees are starting to be integrated into programming and hiring practices. And although there's much more to be done there, as there is in all of these areas, I think, yeah, it's worthwhile thinking through this progression. And finally, my last slide, I guess alongside all this, sorry, this is an incredibly dense slide. I don't really mean you to read it all. You can look it up later. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that the humanitarian sector is changing as well. So policies are emerging which support cash programming, which support the right to work, which support freedom of movement among refugees. And actually, when you think about sustainable energy programming, all of these things are absolutely crucial for delivery of energy access programs in the long run. So, you know, we have movement in this world, and we also have big projects, right? So we have, here in Rwanda, we have the Renewable Energy for Refugees project, which has actually changed things on the ground in a short space of time. And of course, there's others, GIZ's ESDS project in East Africa is doing the same thing. So yeah, we have things moving, there are changes happening on the ground. I guess the question for all of us is, yeah, how we can do more, how we can do better, how we can do it faster, and how we can try and close that gap. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you so much. Yes, oh, Thomas, welcome back.
Thank you.
You have a night break. Yes, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Before we go into the first break, we actually want to take a minute or two or three to introduce the teams that are behind this conference and thank all of them. So let me start with Mattia and the Practical Action team. Mattia, here we are. Whatever you prefer. You've got a microphone in front of you as well, if you like. Switch it, please. Switch it on, please.
Yeah, well, thanks everyone, and I want to thank my colleagues who really organized this with the GPI team, Laura, Denise, and all the rest of the Rwanda's team. So yeah, great to pull this together, and looking forward to the day. Yeah, please stand up, Laura, Denise, and all the Practical Action team all over the place. Denise is there. Great job, thanks.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. We're from NORCAP. We're also co-hosting this conference today. So we have a big team with us. Helen, Elise, and Jörn from the head office. And then we have about 30 experts working on energy around with different partners. So please stand up and take the opportunity to engage with them during the break. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now you know whom to talk in the lunch break. GPA team, can you please stand up? So we have, I'm going here, Phil, Amy, I think you've seen a lot of emails from her. There's Mark in the background, there's Sarah over there, and our wonderful Sadiq is with the technicians. Good. And there's also Alex, but she's outside. So please also reach out to us if you have any questions.
Yes, and the most important partner, refugees. That's why what we have. So I would like to ask my team, you know, Global Refugee-Led Network, other refugee representatives to please stand up. Yes, Shaza, Amir, Joel, Bolingo, and all who are here and they consider they are refugee, please stand up. Oh my God, we can see, yes. We're making sure nothing about us without us, so thank you so much.
Thank you, and then can we pull up the slide with the housekeeping points? Just a little bit how we structure the day and what we are planning to do. Oh yes, here we are. We don't see it here, but
no.
Never mind. Go ahead.
Yes, so here we are talking about different experience, different insights. So we really want you to respect and listen and try to understand. We really want to have positive, critical dialogue, but with a respectful. And be present here, but also we have audience online, which we seems like already forgetting, but we are not forgetting you. So we really encourage you in the chat. put where you are, your question, where you are from, and what you expect from this conference to come up with a suggestion. So we really want to feel your presence here. And people who are here present, I really encourage you to connect with each other. You already see who are here and why we are here. We really want to come up with a concrete action to follow up. And we really want to connect with, especially with the refugee leaders, as a partner, not only as a beneficiary, how we can learn and understand their insight, their struggles, and how we can map out more synergies and collaboration.
Thank you. And you won't be surprised, the next point, be on time, is coming from a German. But the point is, we actually packed 2 years of humanitarian energy into one day. So we are bound to fail. But we are trying to give you a pleasant experience. We are trying to really give you the latest insights of projects, of pilots. It's about what Owen just said. It's the purpose to learn from each other and to really take this day, use this day as much as possible, copy everything you hear in your project at home, and yeah, and also have fun. Can you just quickly go back to the last slide, please? I think I'm forgetting 2 points. Anyway, didn't work, never mind. The agenda for today, as you can see, as I mentioned earlier, we have 2 tracks, track A, track B. Track B is here because we have more people signed up for track B. So please remember what you signed up for if you can. And stick to your original plans, because that's how we set up the rooms. This room is much larger than the room downstairs. And otherwise, enjoy the coffee break. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.